This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West podcast with your host, Brandon Cook and Nick Harrington.
And welcome back to another episode of the Hockeytown West podcast, your source for everything Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye hockey. I am one of your hosts, Brandon.
And I'm Travis.
And we are back to recap another fun weekend of Griffins hockey, some news updates, some injury updates on some key players. We finally got some word on a couple of those and all sorts of other stuff. But before we jump into that, man, Travis, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. Pretty good day. I mean, busy night for us, but that's what makes this fun.
It does make it fun. We're going to bust out all of our recording for the week tonight because I've got a chaotic schedule ahead. The Griffins have a chaotic schedule that are going to add to my chaotic schedule. Thanks, boys. And you got a chaotic schedule. It's just chaos. That's what we live by at this point on this show is just chaos. It's unscripted chaos.
Mine's pretty structured, unlike yours.
Okay, that's fair. Way to rub it in, you know. But I mean, Travis, we did just finish up doing something pretty fun that I think we could tease for the listeners because it was Toledo focused, but I think everybody will enjoy this one.
Yeah. Austin Kaiser, the goalie coach for the Toledo Walleye, was kind enough to stop by. Got to talk a little about Troy Grossneck for the Griffins fans that are familiar with him. Little UC Saros, even dropped Dan Vladar. And then also name dropped a 15-year-old Spencer Knight. So that was pretty cool, but that'll come out this week during the Walleye episode.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, the Toledo Walleye are the only team in the ECHL that have a full-time goalie coach. And based on our conversation today with him, they've got a good one. And, you know, working with some high-value prospects in this organization like Carter Gylander and Jan Bednar and obviously future goalie prospects too, as it seems to be the trend that the Toledo Walleye will get to see our goalies first. And I think we like that trend the way it's gone. I mean, look what Sebastian Cossa has gone on to do. We'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure, in this episode. But that structure of using Toledo as a goalie development system and a player development system, but to really have, you know, someone whose single job outside of being the video coach as well to be that goalie coach down there full time, it's a great asset that not any other organization is using. And based on the way things are looking and our conversation with him, I wouldn't be surprised if you see other full-time goalie coach jobs open in the ECHL going forward.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool too with him being from Atlanta to talk some Atlanta, why the coast works, why the NHL hasn't. And then, I mean, if you do tune into that, stay tuned to the very end of it because he pulled out an absolute relic piece that he has. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, overall, just a fun time, and thanks to Ace again for hopping on. We hope you guys enjoyed that when it does come out this week. But let's dive into the show this week, and we got to start off with a shout-out for a goaltender, speaking of goalie coaches, and that's Ville Husso. You know, if you're not familiar with this show and it's your first time tuning in, we're a Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye focused podcast, and we obviously had a lot of time talking about Ville Husso this season and the work he's been putting in Grand Rapids, the attitude that he's been carrying with this whole situation, because there's a lot of goalies in the NHL that if they were in the situation he was in, wouldn't have a positive attitude, aren't necessarily putting in as hard of work as they should. And all you talk about in this organization with the guys down here is he's been putting in the work. He's been carrying a great attitude. He's going to go out there and give his best for whatever team he's suiting up for that night. You know, he gets the call up to Detroit again. He spent some significant time there now this time. Still hadn't gotten that win yet, but he gets that first win of the season with Detroit against Toronto the other night in what was an outstanding game for him, honestly. Made some huge key saves. But it was just really good on our perspective to see the work he's been putting in down here come to fruition and show in the NHL again and show that Ville Husso still got it.
Yeah, you know, he's played, like 6 games? Yeah. He's appeared in 6 games. Came in halfway through the Vancouver game. I mean, if you look at his save percentage, he's sub 900. The Buffalo game, everybody knows about at this point. But outside of that, the 4 other starts he has, he's been phenomenal, really. You know, if you look at some of the numbers he's posted, I mean, he's had, I think, a 940, something in the 930s, 920 maybe, and a something in the teens. So he's actually been pretty steady back there. I mean, I wouldn't say he's, like, the sole reason they maybe lost a few of them games. You know, it's just good to see that, you know, he's back up in the NHL. I mean, he's an NHL goaltender. He's got the talent to do it. I think it's just a matter of, you know, he's had a pretty tumultuous year, like injured last year, gets healthy, gets re-injured. This year he's He's put on waivers, comes down here, gets nicked up down here, and now he's back up in the NHL. So he's just had a roller coaster, I would say, calendar year, really.
Yeah.
But like you said, the attitude that he's like displayed is unbelievable. And like the press conference after the Leafs game, you could just see like how happy and excited he was to finally get a win again in the NHL and what that meant to him as a person and a player.
Yeah, it's huge, man. It's huge. Whether he ends up back down here in Grand Rapids, what that all looks like, we don't know because he's still with Detroit at this moment. But at the same time, it for the person, we absolutely love it because down in Grand Rapids, getting to talk to him in the locker room after games, he's just such a nice guy, and you love to see things start to kind of fall in his favor. And like we said, he's been playing well up there. Wins and losses aren't a goalie stat. I'll argue that with anybody who wants to argue it going forward. Like, that is not a goalie stat. I'm sorry, it's not. But save percentage and goals against, that's a goalie stat. And to see him still be able to go up there and put up numbers like we've seen in Grand Rapids outside of a couple of games, sure. Like that, it's just a really reassuring thing, and you love it for the guy. So happy for him. And, we spent a lot of the last week's Griffins episode talking about goalies with the Red Wings situation overall at the start of the episode. And then mid-recording, Cossa makes his NHL debut. And yes, there was some topics scrapped in that episode, and we kind of bailed early. Sorry, folks. But at the same time, you don't really take a chance to miss the opportunity to watch the goalie you've been watching develop for the last few years go make his first start and then get his first win. But obviously we were pretty critical about how the Red Wings handled things. And you see, goalie comes back, Cossa gets sent down, and then goalie gets hurt again. And you go, what's Detroit going to do? How are they going to play this? And we all knew what the right answer was. The fan answer is always going to be they want to see Cossa come back and get another start. Yeah, we understand. But that wasn't the right answer for that situation. He had just landed in Colorado, was literally off the plane onto the ice practicing with the Griffins in Colorado. Everything happens with Talbot again, and you want him to get back on a plane and come up there and play a game. That's not good for the goalie. That's how you screw up and you end up with a Wallstead situation. Let's be real. They handled it right. Jack Campbell gets the call up. Did he play a game? No, not yet. But he gets that call up, and after him, stepping back on the ice, getting a few games under his belt, gets that call up. Like, again, that's got to be another feel-good situation for the guy.
Yeah, it's funny, like, how this call up, we're talking about it now, and we just literally had this conversation with Ace with Kylander about how he was in Iowa, gets sent down, gets on the ice, off the ice. Hey, Kylander, you're going back up. But, no, I think they made the right decision. Like, look, it's more beneficial. I think Cossa would even tell you, like, I think he would even say it's more beneficial for him to play than to sit there. I think you could ask Steve Yzerman, and he would tell you it's more beneficial for him to play than to sit. And, I mean, this is kind of why you signed Jack Campbell. Like, yeah. He was an added piece of insurance that has played NHL games, played at an elite level at the NHL. Yeah, we all know what happened and why he was bought out and blah, blah, blah. It's not here nor there. It's in the past. But, like, he got a couple games. He looked pretty good in those couple games. I mean, obviously still kind of working back, and that's okay. It takes time. Like, he missed a lot of time. Yeah. But I think it was the right decision to call up the veteran. Like, let your prospect get some more games. They want him to play a lot. I mean, I just think it was the right decision as a whole. And I think if Jack would have played games prior to the Cossa call up, you probably would have just seen Jack go up in the first place. But again, circumstances outside of everybody's control impacted that. Yes, the Cossa thing was cool and everybody wants him to play in the NHL and be there. But I think, even watching that game that he did appear in, I think it made the most sense for him to come back and just start playing on a regular basis again. I mean, there was a couple things like, okay, he's going to see that and he's going to say, okay, I need to work on this before I make another start. And Jack knows what to expect at that level and has seen it a bunch.
Yeah, 100%. And it was the right way to go about this. And of course, on top of all that, we've got to extend the congratulations to Sebastian Cossa to step in there, get that first NHL win. He does come back. Bob Kaiser does an interview with him that he shared on his Twitter. They played it during the Griffins broadcast. If you caught it, if you haven't yet, you can find it on his page. But he's such a humble kid about the whole situation, just happy to get the opportunity. He's not discouraged by how any of this is gone. And he said he went up there, he played, and he came back with things to work on for himself and things that he can share with the team to work on as well, and immediately jumped in and started working on those things. So he knows he has stuff to work on still. It's not perfect. It's not sunshine and rainbows. There's still things that he's going to improve on. But for him to have that mentality about it, it's something you love to see as a fan.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, look, just continue to develop and grow. Like they probably told him when he came back, look, you're going to go back, you're going to play a lot of games, and you're going to get an opportunity at some point again. Just be ready.
Yeah, and that's all he's got to do is just be ready. And it was so cool to see him jump in though and play. Like that was all you saw over hockey social media at that point, was just all the love for Sebastian Cossa getting that opportunity. And it does suck that he didn't get the full start, and we've talked about that already. We don't need to dive back into that, but at the same time, it's just such a cool thing for him. And fans know there's something special with this goaltender. He's got the tools, and he showed a lot of them there. His play in the shootout in that game was just absolutely unreal. For your first start to go to a shootout like that, I knew, because he had just been in a shootout a couple games ago in Grand Rapids. I'm like, he's gonna excel at this. He loves this stuff. And he went in there, and you were terrified. I was loving it, just like I know he was loving it. And he just got to go in there and show what he can do. And some of the saves he made were fantastic.
Congratulations, your first shootout attempt's Tage Thompson, who's a Red Wings killer, and you stonewall him. I said to Kels, I was like, I don't like this. I was like, this isn't good. This is not good. I don't like this. I'm not confident. I was like, this poor kid, I feel so bad for him. Stops Thompson. Kels is screaming. I'm screaming. Like, I was like, I haven't been that excited over a Red Wings game. I mean, okay, when they tied the game in Montreal last year, we were going pretty crazy. But like, for a prospect to make their impact like this, I can't even tell you the last time I was this excited. Like for a Red Wings prospect's debut.
I think it just comes differently because you got to see him in Toledo. We've obviously interviewed him. We've watched him grow and develop into the goalie he is now, and it's a cool thing. But yeah, I mean, dude, that was so awesome. And what I loved too before the shootout, he's at the bench and Husso's there giving him tips. Like, he's doing everything he can to help this kid. And even, you ask Husso afterwards, and he loved seeing that he got the opportunity. It's nothing but love between these goalies. It's that brotherhood that this team and this organization has built. I mean, people might think with the Red Wings record that things are in shambles, but it's not. The boys still want to see everyone succeed, even though they know, like, hey, that's your replacement. But at the same time, it doesn't bother them. They go out there and they want to see them succeed. And that's what I love about this organization and the guys they've drafted and the culture that they bring to the table here.
It's funny. Like, if you look at Red Wings Twitter, the world is on fire. The season is over, and they're putting kids in the lineup, and they're only 4 points out of the playoffs in December. Like, I think everybody expected more. I expected more. Shame on us, maybe, but like,
I didn't. But
I expected more, but I also had a realization that this could be a little bit of a struggle this year for them. I know we're going on a little bit of a rant here, but I just think, like, look, you're starting to see the young players making impacts, and that's the exciting thing. Like, you have Cossa come in mid game and come back from 2 down and like drag the boys to a win, in which when he went in that game, their vibe was way different than it's been all year. You see Marco playing second line minutes with Patrick Kane. I know Patrick Kane's struggling, but you got to remember, like, the presence that guy's got in the locker room for these young players, that's a big thing to learn from. I mean, Raymond and Mo even said last year how much of, like, wow, like, we've learned so much just seeing this on a daily basis. Bergie's, maybe not having the impact we all hoped and wanted, but it is what it is. Johansson's playing. He's probably, honestly, like, should be playing every game. And when he's in there, he doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't do anything that, like, pops off the paper. But it's that he doesn't do anything wrong, and he's just a steady player when he's in the lineup. So, again, you're integrating kids. You're in the mix. Like, Talbot even said after the Philly game, like, look, if we go win 3 or 4 in a row, we're above the line. Like, it's
Exactly.
not like the season's over. There's a long way to go here. We're just over the quarter pole here. I mean, there's a long way to go.
And not even just the kids, we've seen in Grand Rapids at least recently, taking off. You're looking at Mo Sider take over as a true leader on this team and doing some great things recently. Lucas Raymond is
budding
Lucas Raymond.
Superstar. Like,
dude,
budding
so
superstar. Good. Look, we love, like, you and me are big Raymond guys. We're big Cossa people. I mean, like, to see what Raymond's doing, like, it's just like, man, and everybody was like, he's not scoring at the beginning of the year, but he was putting points up, and now he's starting to score the goals, and it's like, okay, here we go. This kid's about to go nuclear, and that contract's going to age very well.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be beautiful. But yeah, enough of the Red Wings rant, right? We can move on. We can get folks to the Griffins hockey that they want to hear about here. And to dive into that, we'll start with injury updates, right? There's two key ones that we've got to talk about. Carter Mazur and Amadeus Lombardi. Yet again, this weekend, Amadeus Lombardi didn't play. He missed the entire last weekend on the 3-3 in Chicago. He doesn't get in the lineup Friday night, and you hear Bob Kaiser talk on the broadcast that he is going to miss some time. There's obviously no timeline given, but it does sound like he's going to miss significant time. And, there's nothing that confirms the word significant time, but if I'm taking it the way it's been put, Carter Mazur initially was, he's going to miss a couple weeks, and now it's been significant time. So when you hear them kind of talk the way they are about Ammo's injury already, you go, oh, God, here we go. He's going to miss a month, 2 months, who knows. But on the positive side of the injury thing, Carter Mazur is skating again. Dan Watson's hoping to get him into some practices here soon, obviously non-contact. And there was a time frame at the earliest tossed around mid-January for his return here. So a really negative update and a super positive one, knowing that Carter is getting closer and closer. I know it's still, a month away, at least if we're hitting the mid-January time frame, but at the same time, that is a positive.
Yeah, especially for Carter. Look, it's tough. He missed games. You're expecting him to have a big year, push for a job possibly in the NHL. But you know what? Injuries are part of the game. Like, it's just something that can happen. I mean, look, it's a physical game. Guys get hurt. Like, it's just a reality of the situation. Like, yeah, you don't want guys to get hurt. They don't want to get hurt. But you know what? I mean, we'll see how these guys, when they start to get healthy, come back. I mean, look at how well, Carter was off to a good start, and Ammo was scorching hot when he got hurt. So, at the same time, as, we start to creep closer to maybe getting one back, might take them a few games to kind of get the rhythm back. So it's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, we're a month away from that, but at minimum. So, but just something to kind of put out there.
Exactly. And the only other lineup things, obviously, is Jack Campbell still with Detroit. Carter Geilander has been with Grand Rapids, and I believe that's still the way it's going now, or is it reversed finally?
Carter's in Toledo, Gage is in Toledo, and Jan's in Toledo. So there
we go.
We got 3 down here.
3 down there. That means we got Jack and Coase back here in Grand Rapids, so all things are good there. But at the same time, it's just the lineup continues to be very fluid, and the way Dan Watson's kind of approaching the lineup has been also fluid. You head into Friday night, we see some changes, including like Andre Betcher on the wing in this game, Tim Gettinger slot to center. And, you look at the record since Ammo went down and you go, oof, that's not great. And you go into this game Friday that they end up losing and you go, oh, that's really not great. But at the same time, I was talking to you about this. I'm like, at least Dan Watson, one, doesn't turn the blender on in the lineup mid-game. If you've listened to the show since the beginning, when we had Ben Simon as a head coach, we absolutely hated that. And then you watch Dan Watson. He doesn't change things mid-game. He was never that guy, even in Toledo, as you've told me. But you're seeing him try to find what's working in this stretch of games without some star players. And I give a lot of credit to him to try to figure out which line has the best chemistry and what can go. I mean, you look at losing a guy like Amadeus Lombardi when you had the line of Cross Hanas and Doucette and him just going off, and you lose a guy like that, and you're like, okay, where do you slot Doucette and Hanas back into this lineup to get them with guys that are going to work well with them? And they are still struggling to find that out. The chemistry is not clicking the way it was before some injuries happened and before lineup changes happened, but they are trying to figure it out. And I will say, even with a 4-2 loss to the Colorado Eagles Friday night. They played well. It wasn't a bad game. This game does not fall on Cossa. I don't think he came back and had a bad game. Just running you through the Griffins scoring in this one, obviously only two goals to talk about here. Joe Snively tied the game up at 14:36 in the first from Nate Danielson and Antti Tuomisto. It was all Colorado from there. Then Sheldon Dries gets one at the 19-minute mark of the third with the goalie pulled there. It was the second time they had pulled the goalie. Ties the game up there, and it was a power play goal. Good to see the power play getting consistent again. It was a little rough last weekend, but at the same time, not the best game for the Griffins overall, but it wasn't their worst. I think we saw their worst one of the season last Friday against Chicago, and they tried the best they could with this. Colorado, great team. It's probably the most evenly matched matchup you'd see with the Griffins so far this season. Like we all talk about Milwaukee's good. We haven't seen Texas yet. We know they're good, but you're talking about a Western Conference team. It's a team you only play 4 times this year. You got 2 in Colorado, 2 in Grand Rapids later in the season, and you don't really know what you're getting into besides video that you're watching. But when you watch these two teams on the ice, they were very evenly matched. These were low shot games for both teams. You look at 25 shots on goal for Colorado Friday, 21 for Grand Rapids. Both teams were great at clogging up the neutral zone. It was just a tough battle, and I'll give Colorado a ton of credit. They were an ECHL team before that they jumped into the AHL, and their fan base reminds me a lot of Toledo. They're loud, they're passionate. It's a tough place to play in, and they make it as tough as possible, and you got to be able to rise up to that and kind of take that on as a challenge. And unfortunately, the Griffins couldn't do that Friday night. Like I said, this loss doesn't fall on Cossa. I don't think there was many goals in that game where I'm like, ugh, what was that? No, like he played well in this one. You had guys like former 7th round pick for the Detroit Red Wings, Chase Bradley, going off as you kind of anticipate he would, play against an organization that you were drafted by. You're probably got an extra pep in your step that night, and he came out of this game, with an assist on the first goal and his 6th goal of the season in this game. And then you have another guy like TJ Tynan for Colorado, who has been a thorn in the Grand Rapids Griffins side for years, that hasn't scored a goal all freaking season. And who scores the first goal of the game for Colorado? TJ Tynan. And he walks out of this first game with 3 points. Like, again, for some reason, there's guys in the American League that are just Griffin killers. Trey Fix-Molansky with Cleveland is one of them. I remember Andrew Podorowski when he played with the Chicago Wolves. I think that guy had 10 goals in 11 games against Grand Rapids. Like, it's just something about certain guys that show up when they see the Griffins uniform on the ice. So that was a tough battle for them to go up against.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of hockey. Like, for some reason, some guys just play extremely well against whatever team. Like, I can't really relate it to the Griffins, so I can only do it with the Wings, kind of, and even Toledo a little bit. But, like, you look at Detroit, like, Tage Thompson seems to blow the roof off whenever he plays Detroit. Scott Lawton blows the roof off whenever he plays Detroit. Like,
yeah,
I know he had 4 the other night, but Christ, they said he's got 11 goals or something against the Red Wings, and Tage Thompson's Tage Thompson. So sometimes it's just that, for whatever reason, you play really well against that team, and you know what? It happens to the Griffins. It happens. I mean, like you said, you kind of had a little revenge game with Chase Bradley. And then the other guy, I mean, just Griffin killer. Like, it's just kind of what it is.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, Colorado plays a tough game. It's very similar to Grand Rapids, and you'd think practicing against that type every day with the Griffins, when they're practicing against each other, they'd maybe be a little bit better at it, but you don't know until real game situations. And it was a tough battle. I'll give Colorado a ton of credit, and I knew going into it was going to be tough. And going into this too, I mean, you pointed out to me after the game, and with this loss, the Griffins were 0-3 against the Colorado Eagles in Colorado at this point, and I don't think Dan Watson's won a game in that barn at all, since it's not their new one just yet.
I didn't stat check it, but I'm almost certain that's true. Like, I'm almost certain up until Saturday that Waddy hadn't won out there. Like, he's got to hate going there.
I mean, it's a beautiful state to go to. I absolutely love it now after going there for the first time. But yeah, it's tough. And, luckily the boys did get in a day earlier than expected, so they had an extra day to adjust to the elevation up there. And Bob mentioned at practice, it was taking an effect on them. And after experiencing it in person, yeah, it's a tough adjustment when you're a mile high. Good God, I couldn't imagine going out there being an athlete and skating in that. It's rough, but I'm glad they had that adjustment. They didn't look slow, they didn't look sluggish, they didn't look out of sorts. It's just a tough battle. But
well, look at what the Avalanche do to teams. Like, they are I swear they're faster at home. Like,
Oh, 100%.
They just play fast, and like they know, like they almost can turn it into a track meet. Like they know they can take you to deep water just in skating, and you're not going to be able to keep up with them. And I've never experienced that out there. I've never been to Colorado, so it's like one of my favorite states on the map, and I want to go to it, and I can't wait to go there. But that's just one thing. Like you see it with football too. Like that mile, man, it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference, and I think the only other like difference maker for the Griffins in this one, like I talked about chemistry as we led into talking about this game. They weren't making passes you would see them normally make in this one, especially in the power play. I mean, they did get a power play goal, but they went 1 for 5 in the power play, and they had opportunities. It was just some poor passing, and that even carried over into Saturday's game, and that's not something we're used to talking about with the Griffins. Passing has not really been a problem until the past few games. But again, that all comes with chemistry, knowing where the other guy is going to be and playing significant amount of games together. And that's probably my one knock on the team, and I think they all know that overall. It's just the passing wasn't crisp, and that did turn into some great opportunities for Colorado that kind of left Cossa hung out to dry. I can think of a couple point-blank chances that he had to rise up and make big saves on that he did make big saves on, but it just wasn't crisp, and that's not what we're used to talking about. But that's all I've got for Friday's game there. Before we head into Saturday's game, we'll send it to an ad break. We'll do our sponsor obligations, and when we come back, we'll talk Saturday's game and then talk about a few guys that stood out over the weekend. The 24-25 NHL season still has that new car smell, and the action is heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started at DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
There's nothing like the excitement of watching NHL hockey live and in person. The sounds of the puck hitting the boards, the players slamming guys up against the glass. There's truly nothing like it, and it's never been easier to save money on your tickets than now with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And welcome back. All right, let's dive into this Saturday game here. Again, like we said, it was kind of a wild one. And again, another defensive battle between these two teams. But the Griffins end up coming out of this one with a 3-2 shootout victory. And again, this game was full of just wildness, including a 25-minute delay for cleaning up teddy bears from their teddy bear toss. Now, one, this is not a slam at the teddy bear toss. We love the teddy bear toss. It's one of our favorite traditions in hockey. But wholly inefficient cleanup. Now, doing more research on this, not research, just things that happen to show up on TikTok. There was a video on TikTok from the Colorado Eagles ahead of this game with their admin asking how many bears the players think would be thrown, saying they had 12,000 last year. There's a 2,000 bear drop-off this year because they had 10,000 plus, they said. And it still took them 25 flipping minutes to freaking clean the ice, which, again, love the tradition, but you got to think of a more efficient way to clean it up. Like that was crazy, but that is a crazy amount of bears, especially in a 7,200 seat arena. And I don't think that's what it actually totals out to be for a hockey game. I think that's full capacity for concerts. I think it's only like 6,200 for hockey. But at the same time, what a delay. I mean, the Griffins end up going to the locker room at this point in this. And that's just, it was the bane of our existence because one, you're covering a West Coast game on a Saturday night that already started late. We just added a whole nother period plus some to the time that we had to cover this game. I don't think we were done covering it until after midnight, because then you add on, of course, you have that delay. There's me in overtime and a shootout. Like you're like, all right, come on, I'm ready for bed. This is a late night even for me when we're talking about doing podcast work. But again, love the tradition. Good job, Colorado fans. 10,000 bears. I think that's more than we saw in Grand Rapids. That's more than we saw in Toledo. So credit to them, making a lot of kids in Colorado happy this Christmas. But had to bring that one up there. But this game, outside of that, had a little bit of controversy that I think only we were talking about. I think we're the only ones that caught it, thanks to Travis catching it in real time here. The second Colorado goal in the second period that gave them the lead, clearly offsides. Like, clearly offsides.
Yeah, I was like, yo, that's offside. Like, in real time, I was like, I think that's offsides. And, of course, they score. Like, and, like, when you paused it and sent me the picture, I was like, dude, how do you miss that? Like, it was blatantly offsides.
Yeah, Chase Bradley's skate was over the blue line before the puck had even touched the top side of the blue line. Like, the puck carrier still hadn't even crossed the puck over that yet, and his foot was over the blue line. It did not check back up or anything. He continued to angle in past, I believe it was Elmer that was in front of him, and Bradley's the one that ends up scoring the freaking goal to give them the lead. But it didn't matter because Trent Miner does what goalies shouldn't do, and he didn't tend the goal, and goes behind the net to receive a puck that he thinks is being dumped in, but it takes a weird bounce off the glass, lands right out in the slot for Cross Hanas with a wide open net on the Griffins power play, nonetheless. Like, why you're on the penalty kill and you go behind the net to receive the puck? No, you're going to let that thing slide around. Like, what are you doing? Like, if he was in net, he probably makes that stop.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I would say so. I mean, like, hey,
Yeah.
you take
If
them
you're a
when you can get
goaltender.
them. You take them when you can get them. You don't ask how. They don't ask how. They ask how many. Probably the easiest goal Cross will ever score. I mean,
Probably, honestly.
with a goalie on the ice, I should say. It's just a weird play. I mean, that night was weird enough with the walleye game, 2 goals off the bounce. Like,
Yeah, it was just a weird night of hockey for us.
and then that goal, and it was just like I looked up because like I was looking at my phone because like, you know, we had messages and group messages going crazy, trying to like. I was still in utter shock of the offsides by a mile and not a call back, and then I just hear score and I look up and the goalie's like nowhere to be found. I'm like, what the hell happened here? So then I seen the replay and I was like, oh, Cross's eyes were probably just like, they were probably like this big, like, oh my God, I have a wide open net.
I mean, I think it was a weird play overall in general because at one end of the ice, Sebastian Cossa makes a save of the year candidate save. Like, can we call it that? Because that's what it was.
I mean, that might be save of the year in professional hockey.
Yeah, it was insane. Like, you'll have to go to our Twitter page or X Blue Sky, whatever. It's on all the pages at this point. It was unreal. Both angles are out there. The first angle makes it look like a save. Like, it's a good save, but you're like, it's not save of the year. Then you see the second angle that Colorado is showing the replay of as Cross Hanas is going down to the other end of the ice to score. So when you watch the replay, you hear the Colorado announcer say, they scored, but you're watching Sebastian Cossa make this incredible save. But absolutely unreal save by him.
Did anybody alert the state police for Colorado that there was 1 count of robbery in Colorado that night? Like,
dude,
listen, that kind of robbery, and like that'll put you in the state pen probably if you commit that kind of robbery in a store or anything. But that was crazy, man. I was like, I texted you, I was like, oh my God. And then like I was like, did you see the reverse angle? And you're like, no. And I was like, dude, just keep waiting, it's coming. And you're like, oh my God, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, dude, it was unreal. You know, like we mentioned, Cross Hanas obviously scored in this game. It was his 6th of the season. That was from Tim Gettinger and Elmer Soderblom on the power play. The first goal of the game for the Griffins, it was early in the second period that tied the game up at 1, came from Austin Watson, his 7th of the season from William Vollinder and Joe Snively. That was all the scoring for Grand Rapids here. On the other end, you had Felleber, who actually got signed to a Colorado deal right after this game, a 2-way deal with the Avalanche. So you're welcome. We give you that goal, you get a deal. What's the kickback for Grand Rapids? I'm just kidding. So that was the first goal of the game.
To announce?
Yeah, right. That was the first goal of the game. Watson got the second. Chase Bradley got his 7th of the season and 2nd of the weekend. And then Hanas tied the game. There was about 7 minutes left in the 7 minutes into the third. And then the third period was the Sebastian Cossa show. Like, the game overall, we were talking first and second period. It was kind of a snooze fest. Nothing really crazy happening. And then Sebastian Cossa became the best goalie in the world. Not that we already don't think he is one of the best goalies in the world, but dude, that third period for him was outstanding. He kept the Griffins in this one and brought this one to overtime.
Yeah, I think you could definitely see he was a little more settled tonight than he was on Friday night. Just in the fact being that, like, he's back. He's got a game under his belt. He's back to a daily routine with the Griffins. Like, he's like, again, coming off this crazy high. Like, it's just unbelievable. But, no, super good in the third period. Pretty good, really good in the shootout. Like, just, again, like, this goaltender, 2 of his last 3 starts, shootout. And then there was a shootout right before he went up. So it's just like, oh my God, this kid in the one-on-ones, he's probably sick of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like him in the shootout right now, he's so good at him, so good. But
Well, he's
obviously
so
they went
big, like he takes up so much of the net, like, and when
It's hard
he's
to beat him.
and you're sliding left to right, and it's like, where the hell am I supposed to put this puck at? Like, I got this tree sliding left to right in front of me. There's nowhere to go. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So obviously his performance there is what got the Griffins to overtime. Overtime, pretty uneventful. The Griffins had 1 shot on goal. Colorado didn't have any shots. You get to
that
the
was a
shootout.
horrible overtime.
Yeah, it was very
Like,
uneventful. Very
The power
just-
play in overtime was bad.
Oh yeah, it was
Like,
awful.
That was bad. Like, I will say, like, I'm like, okay, 4-on-3, this isn't going to a shootout. And then, like, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, well, what are we doing?
I mean, again, it just speaks to the defensive capabilities of Colorado and Grand Rapids. I mean, neither team could establish anything, even with a bonus guy on one side. They were so good at shutting down plays, especially in the neutral zone. And I hate 3-on-3 overtime with the way the guys try to set things up. It's so freaking painful to watch, and no one could establish anything. They just kept bringing it back out of the zone because they didn't get the look they wanted. So the game obviously heads to a shootout there. Tim Gettinger up first for Grand Rapids, no goal. Colorado scores on their first attempt. Joe Snively, really pretty shootout goal, honestly. I really liked it. It was just ripped it right at the goalie and got it past him. It was exactly what he needed to do at the time. Go to the other end, Sebastian Cossa comes up big. And then who else would you want to be up for the shootout winner at this point, right? Nate Danielson, which we'll talk about him more throughout this, but a fantastic shootout goal. The ice cold stare down with the Colorado fans on the way back too. Like the kid's feeling it. You can tell he's feeling it. And the Griffins come out of this with their first win in Colorado against the Eagles. And what we might think is Dan Watson's first win in Colorado against the Eagles as well, even after the ECHL time. So great for them to come out of this with a win. I mean, I shared the stat in our group chat the night before where I was like, the Griffins without ammo at this point. 1 win. It's an overtime win. Oh God, like, are we going to get shut out this weekend and go home and thinking, wow, this team without Amadeus is rough, but they pull out a win. They shut up my negative thoughts there. And it's exactly what I expect them to do and appreciate them doing. And yeah, it just felt good to get that win against, again, a really, really good Colorado team.
What do we always hear? Next man up. Like, ammo goes down, Nate's kind of coming on. Like, that's just it's what it is. Like, 2 helpers Saturday, a goal or 2 helpers Friday, and a shootout winner Saturday. And honestly, the shot Saturday to go low glove, just shoot it past on, like, that's a tough shot to make. So all the credit to him on that. Like, it's not an easy task. Like, everybody
an experienced goaltender too.
Yeah, everybody gets enamored with going bar down, like, or hitting the top corner, and like, oh, this is so pretty. Like, sometimes, like, just beating a goalie, like, just scoring. Like, I think it's almost more impressive in a one-on-one situation to just shoot it past the goaltender. Like, yeah, the highlight reel, the Instagram style goals are great, but like, sometimes keeping it simple and just shooting the puck's always the better option. Like, if you have a good shot, sometimes it's just better to use it.
Yeah, 100%. And Nate's got a ridiculous shot on him. And he's, like I said, he's feeling it, man. So let's talk about him, right? That's enough about recapping the games. Let's dive into some of these guys and their play this weekend and just how we're feeling about them overall. And it's going to feel like we talk about some of the same guys this week that we do every week. And I'm sorry if you're sick of that. But again, they keep delivering. We got to talk about them. And Nate Danielson right now is delivering. And you called it out when you came to Grand Rapids and talked about his vision. And it just continues to show every game how good he is at seeing play develop and putting the puck in the right place at the right frickin' time.
You put the fishbowl on the kid, and he's like having the whole, like, the throwback to youth hockey playing unreal. Just like, his vision's really good. I've said that numerous times. I just like this player. Like, we were just talking off air, like, you know, like, you look at his stats. He's at 3 goals, 13 assists. His projection's 9 goals, 37 assists. I was like, you know, eventually, like, if he ever hits his stride at the next level, I was like, he may only score like 15 goals, but he might have 60, 70 assists with how good his passing and vision is. So, you know, and it's good to see, like, you know, he's probably not a shot first threat, but he's an elite playmaker. I mean, that's a good thing to have. Also, while being defensively responsible. And I think he would even say, like, look, you know, I try to be as good defensively as I can. And, you know, when you're a center, you got to be a little more reliable in the defensive end, and he does that. And now you're starting to see that blend of offensive creativity come in while still playing within structure on defense.
Yeah, I mean, you imagine pairing this kid up with guys that are on the second line in Detroit right now. Like, come on. Like,
you know, I was thinking about this, like, Skellefteå season ends. Do they bring MBN over with ASP? Like,
these,
like, can we see MBN with Watson and Danielson? I think that'd be fun. Like, put Watson on the strong side, put MBN on the right side, or the weak side and the strong side. But I don't know. Like, I just think, like, when you eventually get Nate, a guy that has an elite shot, the assist total is going to be stupid.
it's going to be insane. Now, like, again, remember who he's been skating with for the majority of the season: Austin Watson and Elmer Soderblom. When you think about those two players, no offense to them, do you think elite shot? You
not
don't.
Particularly. I mean,
and again, he's got Austin Watson set up as third in points in the team right now, on top of what Austin Watson is doing. But again, like, he's got a playmaker setting him up in Nate Danielson, and they're producing at ridiculous results right now. I'm so excited for what this kid could potentially do. And you go back to the beginning of the season, and I was critical as all get out on this kid, and Travis would have to put me in check. But I was wrong, thankfully. Like, he's proved me wrong. He's got me fully bought in. Like, I am fully bought in to think that this kid is going to be a stud, if not star, in the National Hockey League.
I mean, it's early. Still a long way to go. But, like,
see, this is where he puts me in check.
Like, I'm just trying to stay as reasonable as possible. Like, I just think, like, look, yeah, he's playing really well right now. If he can keep on this pace, like, you know, we were just talking about, like, if the deadline comes and wings or sellers, like, he's probably your first call up at this point. With injuries that have happened, like, to other players, like, you know, you could have made a case for even Ammo with how well Ammo was playing. Like, you know, if he's playing that well, like, sometimes you kind of garner yourself a call up. But, like, I think with Nate, like, you could see, like, March, if they do sell a piece or two pieces and they need to call up somebody, like, he's the guy to call up right now. Like,
if that piece that they get rid of or sell off doesn't put Nate in the third or second line, what do you do? Do you call him up still or no? If it's going to be a call up for fourth line?
At that point, you call up Dries or Watson or Snively, but, like, I mean, if you're going to put him in, like, at minimum on the third line, like, I think you kind of have to, like, just to see what he has. Like, I mean, it's hard to say, but personally, I think if this season is still kind of like meh for the Wings and you get to a point where it's like, okay, could we benefit from him seeing 9, 10, 11 games this year and then come in? So, like, and this is the thing too, like with Nate, like, say he does end up in the NHL with a trade deadline trade. Now, this is all hypotheticals. Mm-hmm. Say he gets called up, plays 9, 10 games, sees the game at a faster pace, because we all know the NHL is a lot faster than the AHL. Then he comes back to the Griffins for the playoffs. Like, again, like, that's a big thing, like, that he can now take with him what he's learned and seen if this were to happen, and you come back and you're like, you could see a whole nother level. Like, oh boy, like, this guy really went up, saw what it takes, knows what it's going to be like, possibly, probably next year. I mean, at this point, like, I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, and I'm just kind of talking out loud, and people can call me crazy. I don't really care. I mean, it's just a simple reality of, like, even if a big name gets hurt, like, okay, here's an instance like Patrick Kane ends up hurt, LTIR, or, anybody. It could be anybody in that top 6. Tarasenko gets hurt. Yeah. Like, Tarasenko, Larkin, like, who else are you going to call up? Like,
you call up Nate. Like, you have to.
It's the
you
point.
Have to.
Yeah, like, I mean, it just, like, again, and this goes back to if it's an impact player in the top 9, top 6, first line, like, you got to present skill with skill. And the highest ceiling option that they have right now is Danielson. Like, if a winger gets hurt, it's not going to hurt him to go play the wing in the NHL for a little bit. Like,
God, no. No, it'd be great.
So,
it'd be awesome.
It's just kind of just something I've been thinking about, like, off and on, like, throwing around ideas. Like, if they do make a trade or somebody gets hurt, like, if it's long term, Nate's coming up. Like, I just think that makes the most sense.
It 100% makes the most sense, and it's an exciting thing to think about. And I think the whole point of the conversation is, Red Wings fans need to start getting excited about what this kid's going to bring to the table. Like, if, they worried, everyone was banging the table for him to make the freaking team, right out of camp and whatever, and they were upset that he got sent to the AHL, and then I think they stopped talking about him when the points didn't show. No one was really watching every game like we do and seeing the defensive capabilities that this kid has. And now you're seeing both sides of the puzzle come together. It's time to get excited about him. If you weren't already, or you kind of forgot about him, no, you need to get excited about him, because he's going to be something really, really good for this team and this organization. And God, I'm so thankful that it's a player that we get to watch right now, because every time he's out in the ice, he's doing something where you're like, man, he's a good player.
And I think the biggest thing, like, you're going to draw comparisons to him and Marco. They were drafted.
Always.
Like, they're the two centers Detroit has spent a lot of draft capital on in the top 10 in the draft. Like, I think we all kind of have the realization that, look, Nate's going to probably put up more points than Marco. Yeah. But Marco's going to be that pain in the ass to play against. Sorry about my language. It's just the truth of the matter. Like,
and he already is. I mean,
yeah, like, it's just what it is. Like, he's going to be that, like, oh, I hate playing against this guy. Like, once he, like, grows up a little bit more, adds some size, I would assume that's probably going to be the plan. Like, it's been the plan with, it seems, every big prospect the Wings have had is, hey, put on some weight, put on some size. But, like, you think back to last year, like, Marco was 14, 21, 35 in 71 games. Nate's on pace for 9, 37, 46. Like, you hear that and you're like, okay, only 9 goals. He doesn't even get double-digit goals, but he's on pace for almost 40 assists. Like,
yeah. And I have a feeling he still breaks double-digit goals. I just have this feeling.
I think so. Like, and, 40 helpers, it's pretty legit. Like,
yeah.
For a rookie, like, how many points did Bergie have as a whole last year? Do you have that? Well, you know what? Maybe not. Actually, I got it right here. So, Bergie last year had 56 points. He was 24, 32, 56. Nate's only on a 10-point less pace right now. First year pro. And Bergie had SHL years under his belt, plus a Griffins year under his belt. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I pick up what you're putting down here. Like, this is his first pro year, and he's on pace to match up with guys that spent some time in pro leagues before they even made it to the American League. And that's what's insane to think about. And he's learning, playing some of the toughest minutes against some of the toughest players. Like, he's having to learn a lot this year, and he's taking it on really intelligently, and he's doing things the right way. And again, continues to just be a defensive pain to play against. Like, defensively, the kid is still so good. Like, that hasn't fallen off, and you're seeing production on top of everything else. Like, it's so much fun to watch. But enough about Nate Danielson. Again, it's so hard not to talk about him with how good he's doing. And you'll probably hear us talk about him every week, which is a good sign for Red Wings fans. But we'll obviously talk a little bit more about Sebastian Cossa, right? I mentioned in the third period of Saturday's game, it was the Sebastian Cossa show. He kind of took over and gave the boys a chance to win. And that's all you can ever ask of your goaltenders, to go out there and give us a chance to win. And the Griffins, again, offensively struggling to find their goal scoring that they had hit a stride with before their Chicago trip. And when you're going to hit these little streaks of struggling to score, you need a goalie that's going to go back there and give you a chance to win. And he continues to do that every single night. But that third period performance I felt like he just took it to another level. Like, we know what he can do at this level already. He's played an NHL game finally, so everyone can stop asking what that's going to look like. But you always wonder what's the next level he's going to take his game to. And the third period of that game was a perfect example of the next level he has available.
Yeah, so he's always been, and he said it in a video, and I reference it a lot because I think it's important, needs to dominate at every level before he moves up. Now, you can look at statistics and say, okay, I didn't dominate this weekend, but I was the sole reason that we were in the game Saturday in the third period and didn't lose the game. Like, you know, it's just one of them things to where, like, I really think him getting that game is going to help him because he knows what to expect. And if he sees it down here, he's going to know, okay, I see it at this pace here, but it's even quicker at the NHL. And what tweaks he has to make with his game to get to that next level, you're going to start to see that now that he's seen it at an NHL level.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's going to be fun to continue watching this guy develop. Like, the show he's going to continue to put on this season in Grand Rapids is going to be thrilling. And it's always must watch hockey when he's in the net. So I'm excited for that. We talked a ton about him in this episode. We won't go as in depth like we did with Nate Danielson there. But the next guy we haven't talked about a ton this season. We talked bits and pieces here and there. The guy who came back from injury, he's been trying to find, his feet under him, and William Wallinder. And this weekend was some of Wally's best hockey. Like, he played outstanding this weekend defensively. He put up another point this weekend with an assist. But I'm just seeing his intelligence and his hockey IQ show through more and more every game with where he positions himself defensively and then how he ends up taking over the puck possession and getting it out of our zone and starting a zone entry on the other side. And, of course, his power play production is still there. But he just continues to show like he's a really good defensive prospect that Red Wings fans should also be really excited for. I think, someone asked on Twitter where he was in his stages of development, and I don't think he cracks the roster this season, not with the logjam of defensemen in front of him. But I think this is a kid who has a shot to crack that bottom pairing next season with the Red Wings.
Our left side's so crowded. That's his. I think he starts probably again next year with the Griffins. That's kind of my prediction at this point. Now, last 6 games, he has 4 assists. So, he's starting to find his offense a little bit. Which, if you remember, when he made the jump to the AHL, like, he was regarded as a pretty offensive defenseman coming out of the SHL. I mean, like, didn't do what Sandin Pellikka's doing. That dude's, like, on a completely different level.
Yeah.
But, he was a really good player coming from Sweden. And, it takes time. Like, can't stress that enough. Like,
especially with defensemen.
An over-ripening prospects isn't a bad thing. Like, no. I think with Wally, like, I think he could get the Marco treatment. Like, but
I'm okay with that.
I shouldn't say Marco. I should say the Simon treatment. Like, I feel like maybe to a lesser degree, like, he's maybe not quite as ready as Simon was last year. Like, I think Simon was closer last year to being in the NHL than what Wally is right now.
Yeah.
But
I would say they're about the same, though, at the beginning half of this, because Simon at the beginning half of last season was not NHL ready. Like, it's the second half where he really turned it on, where we were finally like, he's ready.
but I think like the biggest thing with Wally, like I think just because like you look at their left side, like okay, you've got Sherratt, you have Edvinsson, Johansson, and RFA. Is that it on their left side?
I think so.
And Gustafson. So.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about him.
So they got 4. Like, I get it. Like, I'd love to see him there next year, but I think he starts here and then benefits and has an even better development path through that. Like, sometimes it's just better. Like, he's a really good player. He's got a high ceiling still. I mean, he's a 2nd-round draft pick. Like, so what if it takes him an extra year or half a year? Like,
which is totally fine with me, honestly. That extra half a year is totally fine.
Right. And I mean, like, if you take their call-up situation on the left side, they're calling Lagesson up before anybody else.
Well, yeah, he's the MMA champ of the league right now. So
yeah, undisputed. But,
yeah, for real.
No, I like Wally. I think, he missed some time here, a few games. So,
yep.
But what's exciting and good to see is 4 points in 6 games, all assists. So,
yeah.
And he can run a power play unit. Like, he's shown he can do that. He's still doing that. I think it's just steadily keep doing what he's doing, and it's just only going to get better in time.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think with him, like you said, the 4 points in the last 4 games, all being assists, which, I mean, it's pretty common for him. But he had 15 points in total last season in a very, very, very sheltered role. And he's already on pace to outdo that. That's a big positive for me.
He's on pace for 25 points this year. He's already got 6. Like,
exactly.
And
you mentioned him being touted as an offensive defenseman, and I've seen it in practice. I've seen when he does the smaller drills where they let him get close up to the goalie and get in the slot and get to the faceoff circle and kind of activate. He's disgustingly good in those positions. He just hasn't really had the opportunity this season to kind of jump up into the play like that with the play style that they've been playing. I hope to see more opportunities like that come for him where he can really show off that shot. He doesn't have a bomb from the point. Let's be real. That's Tuomisto's category. He's got that lockdown, and that's fine. Wally doesn't have that. I don't think he'll ever have that, but if he gets the opportunity to jump up in the play and a man can fall back and cover him and he can go do his thing, he's going to score goals, and he's very, very dangerous in that position. And I think he's got to figure out, maybe that's the thing that he's got to figure out the most, is how to still be stable defensively.
The two-way part
but
of
jump
it.
up that. Yeah, but jump up and play that offensive role. And once he figures that out, I definitely think the conversation will start to happen. If he doesn't figure that out this season, then that's a different conversation. But I think that is the biggest piece that we're missing, seeing from him consistently game after game.
Yeah, I mean, and like I have his stats pulled up right now. So 22-23 with Rogla, he was half a point per game. In the year before that, he was just shy of half a point per game. So
Jesus.
Like out
it's
of a defenseman.
there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
you just got to figure
there.
it out in this league, and that's the hardest part. That is the hardest part.
And, like, again, he played a season last year, albeit sheltered. It takes time. Like, just everybody.
Can you pull up Albert Johansson's stats for last season?
Yeah.
I'm curious just the comparison between the two there. I know, it's Albert's had a different path, but it's actually kind of similar. And Albert played an extremely sheltered role his first season with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and then was bumped up and playing top pairing minutes last season, spending a lot of time with Edvinsson, spending a lot of time on that top pairing. And, that was kind of the talk between Nick and myself going into this season. It kind of expecting Wally to get that, but then you sign guys like Lagesson and you have Rafferty who's still performing, and you wonder where he's going to fit in and all that. We're seeing the middle pairing minutes, but still trusted with power play opportunity. I'm just curious where that comparison lies and what we saw in Albert last year.
So Albert had 66 games played, 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points. This year,
well, he hasn't played much.
Well, I'm jumping to Wally now. Wally's projected 25 points.
So pretty close to what Albert did last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he can do that or exceed that, that's where the conversation in my head goes. He could crack that roster. I don't want to see him crack that roster and have to go through the Johansson treatment right now. Because again, we believe Johansson should be playing majority of games, even if there's mistakes that the coach is hoping he learns from and all that stuff. That's been kind of the excuse given to why he's not in every game. I still think he's one of the better defensemen on this team, at least playing the defensive side of the game. And Albert was never, in the AHL goal. He wasn't a high goal scorer. He wasn't putting up a crazy amount of points, but his defensive game is so unreal. And I feel like that's what Wallander has, but he also has that upside where he can be an offensive defenseman. So if
Wally's, I just noticed this. Wally's 3 points off half a point per game right now. He has 6 assists in 15 games played.
Because of that time he missed. So
right.
That's, I don't know. I think he could crack it, but that's just me. Again, there's a lot of
much at a half a point per game pace, because 7 points would be 14. He's played 15 games. He's got 6 assists. So
again, there's a lot of stuff in the way of him, right? It's kind of clogged up, but at the same time, if you can force the conversation to be like, okay, he belongs here or he needs that shot, then you're doing the right thing. And I think he's gonna force that conversation this season. I'm not expecting him to be a half a point per game player in the American League, playing second pairing and running one of the power play units. But God, if he can do it, let's go. Like, that's huge for us. That's huge. And again, you can't hit a home run on every single prospect. It's not possible. But damn, does it look good for Yzerman right now, how many of these defensive prospects are hitting really well and showing a lot of promise for the future.
I mean, his ability to draft is the biggest thing. Like, he's shown that, like, okay, people can slam him for the free agent signings, but most of those signings, all them contracts will be off the books by the time the young guys need contracts, in which he's drafting well. Like, it's going to wash itself out in the process.
It's kind of just kicking a can down the road till they're ready, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you brought it up, and I don't want to get too off on another Red Wings tangent, but I still don't think Steve's been able to sign some of the guys he wants to, and not by the player not wanting to be here. I think there's other factors at play that we've kind of talked about and that we've seen talk about a lot this week, with ownership maybe slapping his hand away from signing those deals. And again, that's a discussion for another time, but I don't think Yzerman's the problem there, folks. If anyone actually is thinking that still to this point, let's move on past that, right? He's not the problem.
I got an interesting point once we get past the rest of the Griffins players at the very end that we can bring up about a second round draft pick. So we'll get to that.
I mean, later. If it has to do with this topic, throw it out there now.
I seen a video the other day about how it was a video about Kucherov and how Yzerman drafted him in the second round and how he might have found another gem in Russia in the second round with Buchelnikov. And I'm like sitting here and I'm like, I watched the video and I'm like, oh, this is very eerie how similar this is working. Like, you see it, like, okay, Vasilevsky, and now it's Cossa, and now you have Kucherov and possibly Buchelnikov. Like, and they're both first round picks, the second round picks. It's just it's so weird. But
like, you think about how Tampa was built, right? And you're like, you start to see these guys, like you had Hedman and you see Mo, and you're like, okay.
Now you got to remember with that, he inherited Stamkos and inherited Hedman. He had to draft his version of that here. Like, that wasn't in place.
Exactly. So, like, I'm not saying Mo Seider, well, I mean, he could be as good as Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman's an unreal defenseman. But at the same time, Mo's pretty damn good, too.
You can just see the similarities. Like,
yeah, it's called patience. You have to have patience with this process. It's not you snap your fingers and you're a playoff team next year. Or you might almost crack the playoffs and expect it the next year. It's not how it works. It's just not.
I'll take missing the playoffs for 2 more years if it means making the playoffs for the next 12 and you're a cup contender for 6 of them.
Yeah, 100% all day. Sign me up for that. It's just impatient people. Like, and patience is important.
if it takes GR having these guys for another year, all the more fun for us, right?
Like, exactly. Selfishly, we love it. Oh, back to the GR guys here. Just want to touch briefly. We talked about them last week, the veterans of this team, some of those veteran acquisitions in the offseason. Snively and Dries, again, have a great weekend and showing up and doing the right things at the right time when the team needs them to. And again, you don't expect these guys to go out there and be the leading goal scorers in the team. If they are, great, awesome, bonus for us. But you want the kids to show up and kind of take over the reins and just have that support back there from the veteran side. And when the team's in, kind of a slouch, you want those guys to step in. And I can't say anything bad about those two players. They've been clutch when they need to be clutch, and they've been great defensively. They're great on the offense. Just, again, great offensive signings. Just had to make sure we touched on how well those two players are playing for this team.
They're doing what your veterans are supposed to do. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, between Snively, Dries, Watson, Shine, your veterans are doing what they're supposed to be doing to help your young players develop. Like, you can't ask for much more than what these guys are providing for your young players.
No, they've been great. Great acquisitions, great guys in the room. Like, honestly, just great players overall. The last prospect I wanted to talk about, because it's a weird one, right? But Emil Viro, like, he's been playing really well this season. I think he's been more consistent this season in his play time than he has in the past few seasons. I don't mean this as a knock towards the player, but it seems like a guy that could be part of a trade in the future, right? I don't think there's a pathway to Detroit for this prospect, unfortunately, as it stands now. But at the same time, seeing him play well and good defensively, I think there's something there that some other teams could really use, especially a gritty defenseman like him.
I mean, he's a defensive defenseman, albeit not like super huge. 6 foot, I think, is what he is, around there. He's going to be your steady guy. Like, with whatever pairing he's on, he's your stability guy. Like, he doesn't do a whole lot of things wrong. I wouldn't say, like, he's super exceptional in other areas. He's just super steady. Like,
yeah.
And like, that could benefit maybe even Detroit. You never know. Like,
you do never know, but that pathway is pretty clogged to get there for him.
That left side is going to get crowded, and crowded fast. I mean, it's already crowded. It's only going to get crazier, but I mean, he's here right now, so just enjoy the presence of him providing you some stability. Like, especially
the gritty side he brings to the game. That kid plays with all his heart, and his motor doesn't stop, and he takes zero shit from anybody on the ice, and you absolutely love it.
I'm going to throw out a name. Now, you can say, hey, you're way off, or hey, you're onto something. Joe Hicketts.
Yeah, honestly,
like,
reminds me a lot of him. Maybe not as much personality as Joe Hicketts brought to the table, because Joey was a great personality to have around. But again, we don't know that for sure.
I'm new to the Griffins. I just see, like, it's a name that I remember.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
You know what I mean? Like, could just be somewhat. He was a steady player for the Griffins for a long time.
He was great. Yeah, no complaints about what Joe Hicketts did. He's still doing great things in the American League at this point in time. Like, we hate the phrase career AHLer because a player's trajectory could change at any time, depending on what organization you wind up with. But if that's a stable veteran defenseman over the next few years in Grand Rapids, you think back to guys like Taro Hirose on the front side, who he got his cracks at the NHL, sure, but he was just a stable veteran on the forward side for Grand Rapids. Viro back there, I have no concerns when he's on the ice. I don't see the mistakes. I see him be in the right places at the right time, and he can throw the body and get in your face. Like, he's a pain to play against, and if that's where he lands for the next 5 years, just stability with Grand Rapids, I love that for him. I love that for us.
I mean, nothing wrong with even being a fringe 7th guy.
Yeah.
Like, somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
I think we kind of know, like, and this is no shade at anybody. Like,
oh God, no.
He's not going to be like Simon Edvinsson first pair, Mo Sider's partner. Like,
yeah.
You're hoping for the player. Like, if it's with Detroit, great. could always end up somewhere else that gives him more of an opportunity than what maybe he's getting here. But again, like, he's providing that steady presence on the back end that's not giving you glaring mistakes, and you can only, be happy with that as a coach and an organization, really.
Yeah.
And he's only 22. It's not like he's 27. Like, again, he's still young. Like, again, like, just let him develop. Like, you never know what can happen.
I mean, you bring up Joey Hicketts, and he had NHL games with Detroit. He had a handful of them. And, then he went off to Iowa hoping for kind of finding a new path, and didn't there. And now he's with the Ontario Reign. I mean, he still puts up 30, 40 points a season as a defenseman in the American League. It's still impressive. It's very impressive to do that. And
I mean, that's way more than what Vero's providing. But again, Vero's a young player.
Yeah, Joey Hicketts is 28 now. Like, he's no complaints if that's the same path.
That's just somebody that came to my head.
I like it.
Like, okay, like, because Hicketts wasn't a very big guy.
No, he was tiny.
Like, Vero's not a very big guy. Like, maybe Hicketts had a little more offensive upside, but okay, like,
he had a lot of offensive upside in the American League. He just didn't have it at the NHL level.
That's what I mean. But, like, Vero hasn't gone out here and been a half-point per game player. Christ, he had 6 points his first year with the Griffins, and he's got 2 points in 24 games this year. But I think he plays a different style. Like, this is the fun thing about being, like, talking about prospects, young players. Not everybody's going to put up half a point per game, 3/4 of a point per game. Like, you do need guys that don't put points up and are just steady defensively. And that's what Vero gives you.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Vero, too, in his junior days over in Finland. He wasn't blowing the doors down with points either.
Right.
Just a solid defenseman. And he does have the height advantage on Joe Hicketts. Hicketts is 5'8".
I thought
Vero's 6 foot. Yeah, Hicketts was a small guy, but God, he played with the attitude of a 6'3" monster. So,
which Vero can do, and he's shown to do it.
Yeah. But that's all we've got for guys there. I thought Vero would be a fun one to end on there. Just thinking of the schedule ahead here for the Griffins. Well, it's chaotic before the holiday break here. We're recording this on Monday night. The Griffins play tomorrow night, Tuesday night in Texas, and Wednesday night in Texas as well against the Texas Stars. Our first matchups with them this season. A team that's doing pretty well overall this season. Started off a little slow, but they're kind of one of the better teams in the American League lately. 4-5-1 in their last 10, but they're sitting third in the Central Division, right behind Milwaukee by 3 points there. The Griffins still do have the lead in the Central Division over Milwaukee, albeit it's been cut a little slimmer. But at the same time, it's always an interesting matchup when the Griffins get down to Texas, but they always seem to find a stride down there. I don't know if this is the sunshine and the nice weather that they enjoy. You expect to see Hanas show out, going back to his home state there. He usually plays really well in Texas. I wonder why.
It's the cowboy hats.
It is the cowboy hat, man. He loves it.
And then the cowboy hats and draft beer and horses. That's why they enjoy it. It's a change of pace from snowmen and blizzards.
Yeah, at least it doesn't feel like that around here right now. But they have that, and then the boys come home for the weekend here. They got a Friday-Sunday game going on. They got Milwaukee coming to town on Friday night. Should be a good game. The Griffins have had their number all season, but again, it's a little bit of a depleted lineup for Grand Rapids, so they're really going to have to find their way or play really good defensively against Milwaukee. And again, Milwaukee's still one of the better defensive teams, giving up some of the least amount of goals in the American League this season. And then Texas makes the trip up here Sunday for a nice Sunday afternoon game against the Stars here in Grand Rapids. At the Gridiron Night, the Griffins will be debuting those black and blue Lions look-alike jerseys that Bob Kaiser mentioned something interesting on the broadcast where he said, they would have the Lions logo on them, but the NFL is strict about that. So I think the original design had the Lions logo somewhere in that jersey. And I'm like, man, if they could have pulled that off, those would probably be the most expensive jerseys we see come through an auction in Grand Rapids in a long time. Because could you imagine a Cossa Lions look-alike jersey?
Whose are you buying? That's my question. Like, whose are you going to buy?
Bro, Christmas shopping bankrupted me. And I don't think I'm going to end up coming home with one of these ones, which is the saddest thing.
If I'm buying a Bullfrogs jersey this year, you got to buy a Detroit Lions themed Griffins jersey. Like, come on.
We'll talk off air how much money you're going to wire me for that purchase. All right. Outside of that, though, that is the Griffin schedule, and that is it before the holiday break for them, which is nice that they are going to get an
They're busy before the break. Like
they're busy, but they're getting an actual break for the holidays this season, which is really nice. You think of the Texas road trip last year, and they had a couple days off and bounced right back into games right after it. And their last game here is on the 22nd. They're not back in action until the 28th. So they get a nice break. They get to enjoy the holidays. I'm sure some of the guys will actually get to go home for that too. And that'll be nice. So a lot of stuff to talk about for the Griffins over this weekend. You might even see a bonus episode of Griffins coverage this weekend, just so we don't have to cram 4 games into one episode next week. Well, depend on our crazy life schedule though.
That'd be 2 hours. That'd be easy. Be 2 hours.
Yeah, right. No one wants to listen to us talk for 2 hours. I don't want to listen to us talk for 2 hours. No offense taken if you agree with that, folks. But that's all we've got this week. We'll wrap this one up there. Thank you all for tuning in, as always. And of course, we've got to thank our sponsors of the show, DraftKings and Game Time. And of course, the Hockey Podcast Network for being fantastic partners with us. But without our primary sponsor and our Patreon sponsors, the show would not be possible. That primary sponsor is Everything Hockey Clothing Company. Make sure you head over to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST, supports the show and saves you a few bucks on your order. Pick up something nice over there. And of course, our Patreon subscribers as well. Head over to patreon.com/HockeytownWest if you want to jump in and join them. And those current folks over there are John in Florida, Elaine Grace, Griffin, Randy, Derek, Lori, Allen, and Michael. Thank you all for the love and support. We appreciate you guys. And like I said, if you want to join them in supporting the show as well, head over to Hockeytown. I always do it once an episode. Head over to patreon.com/HockeytownWest and check out the tiers over there. We appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone for tuning in as always. Be sure to check out the Toledo episode this week to see the interview with Austin Kaiser, the goalie coach in Toledo. It was a fantastic one. You will definitely enjoy it, whether you're a Walleye fan, Griffins fan, or just hockey fan in general. The goalie coach perspective is one we've been wanting to get for a long time. So we definitely appreciated him hopping on, and make sure you go check that out.
If you're a goalie nerd, you're going to love this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The perspectives he gave us were fantastic. So thank you all again. Have a fantastic week. Who knows? We'll talk to you sooner than later, potentially. But if not, have a safe weekend. And as always, go Griffins, go Walleye, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at BrandonGR Hockey.